Hello and welcome. I'm Rawia Alami and this is the Dailies, where we take a look at important news stories, reports, analysis and articles published in newspapers and media outlets across the world. Many themes ran across global newspapers today. President Trump's big tax bill and the American court's verdict to acquit music mogul known as Diddy of most serious sexual charges against him received a lot of attention from American newspapers. British newspapers, on the other hand, were dominated by the news of what they called a dramatic day in British politics, as the emotional display of Chancellor Rachel Reeves sent the British pound tumbling. However, generally, the Middle East and the Gaza ceasefire negotiations continue to be the focus of many media outlets today. We'll start with Israel Hayom, which published a report revealing a major breakthrough in efforts to end the Gaza war, as Israel agreed to include explicit American guarantees in a new ceasefire deal after intensive talks with the Trump administration. This shift means the 2-month ceasefire will now be tied to negotiations aimed at ending the conflict entirely, not just posing it. The report explains that the U.S. commitment puts strong pressure on Hamas to accept the deal, with President Trump warning that the offer will not improve. The agreement also promises expanded humanitarian aid for Gaza, and the move follows high-level meetings between Israeli and U.S. officials, and both Israeli and Hamas delegations are expected in Cairo soon for further talks. The report concludes that the developments mark a significant step towards a possible end to the war. In an exclusive report, The Guardian revealed that a 500-pound US-made bomb was used by the Israeli army in their recent attack on a busy Gaza beachfront cafe. The blast killed at least 24 civilians, including children and local artists, and left many more injured. The report says that experts in international law argue that deploying such a large bomb in a crowded area is almost certainly unlawful and could amount to a war crime. The Israeli military claims it took precautions to avoid civilian casualties, but critics contend the weapon's use was excessive and indiscriminate. The piece explains that this attack has triggered outrage and demands for investigation, drawing attention to the severe risks faced by Gaza civilians and prompting renewed scrutiny of how military force is used in densely populated places. Le Monde published an op-ed piece by Dennis Charbit, a professor of political science at the Open University of Israel, who examines the complex legacy of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after Israel's military success against Iran. It actually argues that while Netanyahu deserves support for weakening the Iranian threat and reshaping regional alliance, his ongoing campaign in Gaza risks destroying prospects for peace and undermining Israel's legitimacy. The author warns that Netanyahu's current approach, marked by heavy destruction, disregard for Palestinian rights, and erosion of Israel's democratic checks and balances, could indeed turn Israel into a repressive state and fuel further instability. The article calls for a balanced stance, backing Netanyahu's defensive action against Iran, but firmly opposing his policies in Gaza that exclude Palestinians from a political solution. It concludes that true regional stability requires cooperation, restraint, and respect for all people's rights. As all British newspapers reported on the emotional display of Chancellor Rachel Reeves in the British Parliament yesterday, the Telegraph reported on what it called a dramatic day in British politics. Effects of such a day echoed in British markets, triggering a £3 billion sell-off, sending the pound tumbling indeed. The Reeves was seen wiping away tears after Prime Minister Keir Starmer failed to confirm her future, fueling speculation about her job security. The turmoil rattled investors, causing UK borrowing costs to spike and raising fears of further tax hikes. Reeves' distress also followed a major welfare policy U-turn that wiped out much of her budget buffer, leaving her with tough choices ahead. The report also points out that while government officials insisted she has Starmer's full support, opposition leaders seized the moment, calling her humiliated. The episode underscores the intense pressure on the Chancellor and the fragile state of Britain's finances. The New York Times published a report explaining the U.S. halt of shipments of key weapons, including Patriot air defense missiles, to Ukraine as being part of a wider Pentagon review of all American arms exports. Officials say the move is due to concerns about dwindling U.S. stockpiles and the need to prioritize American security and military commitments worldwide. The review covers every country receiving U.S. weapons, not just Ukraine, and claims to help leaders decide where limited resources should go. Now, the post comes at a critical time indeed for Ukraine, which relies on U.S. support for defense against Russian attacks. The report points out that while President Trump says he is open to resuming shipments, the final decision will depend on the Pentagon's assessment of U.S. needs and global obligations. We'll stay with the New York Times, which, like many other American newspapers and media outlets, continue to cover the trial of music mogul Sean Combs, known as Diddy, reporting on the court's decision to acquit him of most of serious charges, but denied him bail. The newspaper published an article by music critic John Caramanica recounting the dramatic trial of Combs, who was once seen as untouchable and now faced serious charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering. After weeks of damaging testimony, Combs was acquitted of all but a minor charge, avoiding the fate of other disgraced celebrities like Harvey Weinstein and R. Kelly. The author explains that the verdict suggests that despite his tarnished image and a long history of public scandals, Combs' celebrity status may shield him from lasting consequences. The piece notes that while the trial exposed troubling details about his behavior, the jury apparently accepted his defense that the relationships were consensual. It concludes that now Combs faces a choice: retreat quietly or attempt a comeback, as the public figure weighs how to respond to his near miss with accountability. The Wall Street Journal published an exclusive report examining the warnings of Iranian Nobel Peace Prize winner Narges Mohammadi, who says the recent war with Israel has made life even more dangerous for Iranians seeking democracy. Mohammadi, a long-time human rights activist, argues that Iran's leaders are cracking down harder on civil society to maintain power, arresting and even executing people accused of spying for Israel. The report highlights Mohammadi's fears that repression will intensify, especially against young activists. Despite the regime's weakened military, Mohammadi believes only Iranians, not foreign powers, should drive change, warning that war and outside attacks actually undermine the push for democracy. Her story highlights the courage of Iran's civil society, but also the risks they face as the government uses conflict to justify more control and silence dissent. And we'll end with the Washington Post, where Kasha Patel wrote, revealing a scientific breakthrough as researchers sequence the oldest complete DNA from ancient Egypt, dating back over 4,000 years to the time of the pyramids. The author referenced a study published in Nature Scientific Journal explaining how scientists studied the remains of a man, likely a potter, whose well-preserved burial allowed for detailed genetic analysis. The results show that while 80% of his ancestry was indeed North African, about 20% came from West Asia, including regions like Iraq and also Iran, proving that ancient Egyptians and Mesopotamians intermingled. The author highlights that this discovery goes beyond artifacts, offering the first genetic evidence of population mixing between these early civilizations. The piece concludes that the study not only sheds light on the life of an ordinary Egyptian, but also opens new possibilities for understanding the ancestry and daily lives of non-royal Egyptians. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.